Let's eat. The Sabbath is ceremonial, and he put two passages there, Leviticus 23 and John 5. But we're going to go look at Leviticus 23 only. Okay, we don't need to go to John 5. Let's go to Leviticus 23. The 7-day Sabbath is not ceremonial, Cornell Allen. It is not ceremonial. The annual Sabbath, the yearly Sabbaths are ceremonial. Let's go to Leviticus 23. Now, let me first mention the annual Sabbath. The annual Sabbaths in Leviticus 23 are the Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, and Feast of Tabernacles. These are called Sabbaths. The Feast of Tabernacles lasted for 7 days. The first day was kept as a Sabbath. Another Sabbath is kept after these 7 days end. Okay? These are all ceremonial Sabbaths. Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, and the two Sabbaths in the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, the weekly Sabbath is placed in Leviticus chapter 23. That's why many Bible students say that this Sabbath is ceremonial. But just by a simple observance of Leviticus 23, we can see that the weekly seventh-day Sabbath is separated and distinct from the yearly festivals and Sabbaths. Let's look. You look at the whole chapter of Leviticus 23. You're going to see that this chapter is divided into two parts. Okay? It's like sandwich, two layers of sandwich with three, what you call that? Three bread buns. So, and two fillings. So first, verse 2 starts with these words. Verse 2 starts with these words. These are the holy convocations and my feast. That's verse 2. And then verse 3 brings in the seventh-day Sabbath, a holy convocation. That's in verse 3. Now, verse 3 looks like it looks parenthetical, right? It was brought in there because it's in the context of holy convocations, right? God is telling the people, these are my holy convocations, and Sabbath is one of them. Holy convocations, the meaning for that is holy assembling, holy gathering, right? People gather to worship. So the Sabbath is a day of gathering together to worship, right? So there's verse 3. It talks about the 7-day Sabbath. And then there's another bread bun there, another separation. These are the feast of the Lord and holy convocation. That's in verse 4. And then in verse 5 all the way to verse 36 is the filling of the sandwich, right? The lettuce, the cheese, the ketchup, the tomatoes, the ham, whatever, meat, the chicken, the fish, whatever. So from verse 5 to verse 36 is the list of the feast days and holy convocation, starting at Passover feast, then Feast of Unleavened Bread, then First Fruits Festival, then Pentecost, and then Feast of Trumpets, then Day of Atonement, and then finally the Feast of Tabernacles. And then it ends with verse 37. These are the feasts of the Lord and holy convocations. So you see, the Sabbath in Leviticus 23 is set apart from these annual Sabbaths, these feast days and holy convocations. All these feast days and holy convocations from verse 5 to verse 36 are all together. And what separates the Sabbath and these feast days or these holy convocations are these phrases in verse 2, verse 4, and verse 37. These are the holy convocations and my feast days. Verse 4, these are the feast of the Lord and holy convocations. These are the feast of the Lord and holy convocation in verse 37. So look, just by looking at Leviticus 23, we see a separation of the Sabbath from the rest of the other ceremonial Sabbaths. One more distinction between the seventh-day Sabbath and the annual Sabbaths. Not only that the seventh-day Sabbath happens every week and the annual Sabbaths happen every year. That's one distinction. Here's another one. The other distinction is the seventh day was instituted before sin. Okay, the seventh-day Sabbath was instituted before sin. It came into existence before sin came into the world. Okay, and all the annual feasts, the feast days and holy convocations were instituted after sin. The Sabbath is set apart from all other holy convocations. I'm going to read Genesis chapter 2, verse 3. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. Okay? Kadash or Kodesh or Kadash. Sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. The Hebrew word for sanctified is Kodash, which means to set apart. The seventh-day Sabbath is set apart from other days. Why would God set it apart? Why did God set it apart? Did he set it apart for himself? Okay, maybe you can answer that question.